Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. All right, settle down. I know it's the end of the semester. We're all excited. All right. The meeting of the Faculty Senate will come to order. Welcome, everyone. If you've not done so already, please make sure to check in using your Seaboard mobile ID so you get credit for attendance, or if you're having difficulty, you can check in with the desk out front or up here. Thank you for that. For our colleagues connecting from a distance, please begin your response with Potomac State or WVU Tech. So Potomac State, how many are present?
Potomac State has 4 present, sir.
Thank you muchly. And WVU Tech, how many are present?
WVU Tech has 3 senators present.
Thank you muchly. So we have a quorum for today. I'm going to intervene in the procedures very slightly here for a moment. As many of you know, a WVU faculty member passed away earlier this weekend. Elizabeth Leo was an instructor in the English department. I'm sure everyone will join me in offering condolences to her family and to the students and faculty in English. I thought it appropriate that we start the Senate meeting with a moment of silence at the beginning of Senate today before we move on the agenda. So if you could please pause for a moment. Okay. Thank you. And again, I think all of us send our thoughts and best wishes to her family, friends, and colleagues. Thank you. Okay, for approval, minutes of the April 8th Faculty Senate meeting. The minutes of the previous meeting have been distributed as an annex to your agenda. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes from the April meeting? Okay, hearing no corrections, the minutes are approved as written. Okay, next up on the agenda, a report from our president, E. Gordon Gee.
Hello, everyone. How are you all doing? Come on. How are you doing? Oh, good. I tell you something. I was going around shaking hands and handing out diplomas a minute or two ago. It was one of those things. It's been a wonderful commencement season, but we have now moved on to starting to think about next year. The rhythm of universities are very interesting. We move from May to May with a little hiatus between May and August, and then we start bringing on new students. So we send 5,000 of them out. We bring 5,000 of them in, and it all starts over again. So it's an interesting world we live in, unusual, and takes a lot of people time to acclimate to it. I noticed the president of the University of Oklahoma just stepped down after 9 months. He didn't acclimate to it, apparently, so you know how that is. So I've been there. Thank you very much. First of all, I want to thank Dave Hauser. Dave has done, I think, a remarkable job in terms of his faculty leadership role. David, don't hang your head down there, because you have. But I think the fact, and when I talked to him, I guess it was yesterday or the day before. First of all, we're in tables where we're going to have discussion, which I think is healthy. Secondly of all, the discussions we've had, we're going to have reports on those, which I think will be very important to our transition team and to the teams that are really thinking about where we're going next, and I appreciate that, but David has done a great job. This may or may not be your last time, but in case it is, I want to just thank David personally and professionally for doing a terrific job. So would you give him a round of applause, would you please? Secondly, we are losing our provost, and Joyce is going to assume the presidency of Colorado State, another great land-grant institution, and she'll be doing that in in just a few weeks, and we're going to have a reception for her this afternoon after this meeting. So I hope that all of you will come and join us. Where is that, by the way? It's at the law school. I knew it was somewhere, but yeah, there it is. There it is at the law school. Great, thank you. So if one were on Mars, looking down, one would think that our university is in chaos. We have so many transitions going on, provosts leaving, deans retiring, stepping down. We have a lot of interim folks. We have also a number of openings, and searches will be commencing. If you sit in Stewart Hall on the first floor in my chair, you view it as exhilarating and opportunistic. And that's exactly the way that I look at it. I think there's always a rhythm to a university, the same that there is every year. And I think the opportunity for us to have new and creative people come and join us and take on new assignments, and more importantly, for us to think very interestingly and creatively about the direction of the institution. Any institution that does not believe that it needs to change is an institution that is heading in the wrong direction. We need to change. We will continue to need to change. The next president will say you need to change. The next president will say we need to change because change is part of the academic environment any longer, and I think that is something that we all need to understand and get used to. So, saying that, of course, we've had with Joyce's departure, we have appointed a new provost, Mary Ann Reed, who is not here with us today. I don't believe Mary Ann is not here. I don't believe, and I get asked the question, why appoint someone right now? Well, I will tell you. First of all, we have a lot of momentum. We don't want to lose that. Secondly of all, with all the searches and all the other activities we have ongoing, we want to have someone in the left chair in our academic leadership role that will continue to do that. Mary Ann, as many of you know, has been a wonderful dean of our College of Media. She has auditioned for this job for 16 years in that deanship role. She literally did not want to have it, but I asked her if she would do this because she did such an excellent job at Eberly. So she's been part of a smaller institution and a larger part of the college. One of the things that struck me about Mary Ann is her energy and her creativity. I think we all admit that she has both. Our Reed College of Media is one of the most creative institutions of its kind in this country. And in fact, a year ago, I had the opportunity of being with her in Chicago when she was given the award as the single most important dean of media and journalism in this country. And so she does have an ability to lead and an ability to tell our story. So I really have appreciated the fact that you would take this on. Joyce will talk about some of the other transitions that we have going on in searches, but I wanted to make certain that everyone knew that I'm enthusiastic about the opportunity to work with Mary Ann. As you know, a provost and a president are sort of like professionally married, and that does mean that we work very, very closely, and I feel very, very enthusiastic about that. On the other hand, let me just say something about Joyce. Joyce has been my partner here for 5 years, came to us out of the law school, as you know. I think without a doubt that Joyce has been a transformative leader in this university. She came in with a very clear agenda, one of empowerment, one of making certain that we had a sense of true diversity and inclusion, one that made sense of growing the role for women in our institution, all of which I think she has done a wonderful job with, and we are the net beneficiaries of this. Joyce came to me about I guess it was about two and a half months ago, and said that she thought that she was starting to be approached about university presidencies and what did I think, and I said I think that you're more than ready and that this would be a great opportunity for an institution. But I thought, it'd be a year or something like that. That's the way these things generally work. Well, from the day she told me to the day she had the job, it was 6 weeks. That is That's pretty damn fast, Joyce. You must have already had that lined up, but I just think it's so important for us to know that she has been such a wonderful influence. She again is one of those individuals that was not seeking a position; the position sought her, and she had been here now. Is it 23 years that you were at the university? So she is not. She didn't fly through here. She spent a good deal of time. So would you please give her a round of applause? I'd appreciate that. So saying that, I welcome any questions from anyone. Any questions anywhere? Seeing or hearing none? Joyce? No, I think it's your turn. Joyce, I think it is your turn, okay?
Well, I want to echo everything that Gordon said about Dave Hauser. I do want to point out something very special about Dave, though he has really set the bar very high for footwear for men. Following former President of the Senate, Lisa DiBartolomeo's lead. So anyone else who becomes, show them. He always has the most beautiful shoes. Can you see them? Yes. They'll be in display after. But I think that that's just a funny thing about, WVU Faculty Senate presidents. So those of you who are aspiring to the Faculty President Senate, get that footwear going, But thank you very much, Dave, for your service. You've just been wonderful to work with. And he never lets anything rest. He's great at questioning. You can tell that he's a great professor. He never, ever lets us get away without answering anything, which is exactly the kind of Senate president you want. So it's just been wonderful. We've had a wonderful, as Gordon said, absolutely amazing commencement weekend. For those of you who go to commencement, you know that if you go to one, it's taxing. I think we all owe Gordon a huge shout out, because how many did you do, Gordon? 7? 8. Gordon did 8 and I did 7. And at the end of the day yesterday, so it was the very last commencement, it was Eberly undergrad. There were about 1,050 students. And it was our last one, but we ended up having the best time. It was really a fabulous commencement, and that's what keeps us going when we see those students across the stage. And particularly with Eberly undergrad, now that the Regent's bachelor's degree is back in Eberly, and you see all of these amazing students who have decided to return to school, put their portfolios together, and earn that degree after many, many years of being out of school is deeply, deeply moving. The life stories that walk across that platform at that moment is really quite amazing. So we really enjoyed that. As you know, I am becoming the president of Colorado State University. It's very hard to leave here after 23 years. In my remarks to the board at CSU, I told them I was trading the Appalachians for the Rockies and country roads for Rocky Mountain High, and I'll only live in states that John Denver has songs about. So that limits it to 2, as far as I know, West Virginia and Colorado. It's a place that's very similar to WVU, so I just came back from spending 6 days out there to meet with their board and attend their board meeting and some dedications and meet some of their donors. And it's very much like being in a parallel universe. So it's a very, very interesting experience. They're deeply committed, as we are, to our land grant mission. And so I really appreciate being able to go there and be a leader of a campus that is so much like ours and so committed. So it's really wonderful. If any of you come out there and are invited to speak or going to a conference or something, please make sure that I know that you're coming, because I'll miss my WVU colleagues, and it'll be wonderful to know that you're out there. I want to talk a minute about transitions, just so I can be available to answer any questions if there are any. One transition I want to point out, and I just would like us to recognize CB. CB is actually going to be here if you have a June meeting, but I know that's up in the air, so this could be the last one. But, and then I don't think there'll be another one before CB leaves, but CB Wilson has been our Associate Provost for Academic Personnel for almost 40 years. He is, I refer to him as my Yoda, because he is so wise. And he is responsible for so many wonderful policies that have made a difference for our faculty. And we had a celebration for CB, and I wasn't able to be there. So I want to just take a moment and ask you to join me in a round of applause recognizing everything he's done for us. I will very much miss my weekly meetings with CB, where if there's something that is going to surprise us, he says, "You can't make this stuff up." And he's always right. You can't. But in terms of other transitions, Tracy Morris has been serving as interim dean of the College of Education and Human Services, and she has been doing a really, really wonderful job. And I will be working with Mary Ann in the transition to determine when we will launch a search. But I just wanted to let you know that Tracy has done a wonderful job, and everything I hear from the faculty over there is that they've been very excited to have her there. Ken Blemmings is interim of Ag, the Davis College of Agriculture, Natural Resources, and Design, and now that I've finally memorized all that, I'm leaving. But he is the interim, and there will be a search. He took the position understanding that there would be a search, and we'll probably be launching that at the start of the academic year. Ryan Claycomb is the acting dean of honors, and until we know what's going to happen with Ken, we won't take any action on Ryan's position as acting, because if Ken were to become the dean of Davis in a search, then we would then have a search for honors. If he doesn't become the dean of Davis, then he will return to being the dean of the Honors College. CPAS, Jack Watson is the interim. He just started, so I'm not sure when we'll start a search on that, and I'll have to confer with Mary Ann on that one. Extension, Sude Perutz came in for a year, so she has a year's commitment, so a search will start in that process as well. In Statler, the former chair of physics, Earl Seamy, moved into the position of dean of the Statler College, interim dean of the Statler College, and a search will follow. Reed College, Diana Martinelli has stepped into the role of dean, not interim. So she's just slid into the position of dean for now, and then I believe it's for a 2-year appointment, and then Mary Ann will reconsider as provost how to move from that point. Catherine Carricker is many of you may not know this, but Catherine Carricker, who has been our wonderful associate provost for graduate education, has actually decided to go into phased retirement, and she's going to start on June 30th. So when Gordon said that there are so many wonderful opportunities, it's really true. There's just an incredible way of re-envisioning the provost's office. And that, I think, is particularly important because one of the goals that Gordon and I had when I came in was to really launch centers and institutes that reported directly to the provost to be able to provide campus-wide curriculum and campus-wide research. So an example of that is the Launch Lab, the Innovation and Entrepreneurship Ecosystem. And after 5 years, we started the ecosystem. It's really grown, and for any of those who participated in Demo Day, it's kind of amazing. We did Demo Day for the first time last year, and about, I think, 300 students participated. We did it this year, and 1,600 students participated, and every college. So you truly see what can happen when you do have a cross-disciplinary kind of mega operation that stretches into every college. And so what is happening with that I think is so important is we started that piece and we started the ecosystem. We had a really good idea, I think, about how to bridge. We've gone through 3 fellowships, 3 cohorts of fellowships where between 5 and 7 people from all of the campuses have worked together to produce cross-disciplinary programs that are both based in several disciplines and also in entrepreneurship and innovation. I don't know if there's anyone in the room who had one of those fellowships, but they've just been really phenomenal, and enrollment in those courses has been phenomenal. But the innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem is now the starting point for what is happening now in the Chambers College of Business and Economics with the incubator, the business incubator, and the business accelerator. And so we now actually have all of the pieces of the ecosystem 5 years later. Same with the Energy Institute. That's another example of these cross-disciplinary institutes that we started. And there are many more that I could talk about. The Translational Medicine Institute, looking at rural health and health disparities, has been very powerful. And I just want to just remark on those because they have been very, very successful. Which means that we're one of the few universities in the United States that's actually achieved this level of cross-disciplinary organization and work. But at the point at 5 years where we're re-examining that, it'll be really, really interesting to see where they go and how we build on them and what we can do more than we've been able to do before. And I know with Mary Ann's creativity and inclination toward innovation, and her wonderful organizational skills, I know that she's going to be able to do wonderful things. After we have built these, now we can move on and figure out what we do with them from this point on and how we make them more powerful, better, and continue to raise the profile of the institution for doing really, really excellent interdisciplinary work. So my final words are really to all of you. Thank you very much for allowing me to be your provost. I never took that for granted. I care deeply about our faculty, and I appreciate all of you, all that you've done and all that you continue to do. You are really an extraordinary group, and it's been my privilege to work with all of you. Thank you.
Okay, she fled quickly. Does anyone have questions for the provost? Okay, as part of the provost section, however, I have invited Mark Gavin to come up and explain a little bit about, as most of you know, we're having some budget cuts this year, and Mark is familiar with those and should be able to give us a little bit more sort of information and understanding of where they're coming from and sort of how they're being distributed.
All right, thanks, Dave, and everybody. I'll try to keep this short and also take questions at the end, and the others from the provost office can handle questions as well. There have been a lot of discussions over the last several months on a number of topics, and of course, budget is one of those. It has occupied much of my life, and the other person I'm looking at sitting over there is Paul. Paul and I, this has been a major part of our life over the last 2 to 3 months at least. So as you all are undoubtedly aware, there has been a set of budget reductions moving into fiscal year 2020. I just want to take a few minutes, and this really kind of comes out of a discussion we've had on several occasions in several venues, including with Faculty Senate Executive Committee. And I think discussions there kind of suggested that this would be a good venue to come and at least talk about some of these issues so that you all understand what's happened, what we're doing moving forward, and how we face these challenges in front of us for the next fiscal year. Broadly speaking, and I think one of the first questions that tends to come up is, why are we oftentimes sitting in April or May before the budget, which becomes active July 1, is really solidified and known? And there are some straightforward answers to that, and it simply is the timing of all the things that make up our budget decisions. So if I can kind of give you a quick background on that, that'll set the stage for the conversation about fiscal year 20 specifically. So one of the things that makes up our budget, of course, is state allocations. And we really never know what those are going to be with any level of concreteness until, say, April or May. So we have to wait for that to come in to understand what the state is going to do with our budget for the following fiscal year. There's also the enrollment issue. And while we can have some projections and some models, really we don't get a good handle on what our enrollment numbers might be that weighs heavily on the next year's budget until about the same time frame. Late into the spring semester, we start to get a much better idea of what next year's enrollments might look like. We also have tuition. And again, while we might have an idea of where we want to head from year to year, really that tuition model doesn't go forward and get approved by the Board of Governors until the earliest would generally be about kind of an idea of May, and oftentimes that's not until about June until that also gets nailed down. We were able to move a little bit earlier this year on that, but that also, because that happens later into the spring semester, that's another piece of the puzzle that doesn't become concrete until about now. And then the other thing is what I just mentioned, which is BOG approval. And all these pieces really have to come together. We have to understand state allocation. We have to understand what enrollment is likely to materialize at. And we have to understand what we're comfortable with tuition-wise before we can put all that into a budget model and take that whole package to the Board of Governors and say, this is what we want to go forward with for the next year, and then work with them to make sure that they're comfortable as well. That is why we're oftentimes looking at deep into the spring semester to really nail this thing down. And again, we can have ideas of how this is going to fall out, but no level of concreteness until about now. If you haven't heard the number, what the university is facing from a central allocation perspective is a budget reduction of $14.8 million. Now that's across all the university, academic and non-academic functions, but that's the total target we're looking at as we move into fiscal year 2020. I'm going to take off my glasses so I make sure I hit notes, sorry. With regards to that, why the 15 million or nearly 15 million? And the single biggest answer to that question is last fall's enrollment, which took a drop. We saw at, I think, 4688 first-time enrollments last fall. That was a decrease of about 500 from the year prior. And that 500 makes a significant difference in the kind of tuition that we bring in. And, and of course, as an undergraduate institution, or largely undergraduate institution, that enrollment decrease will follow us for 4 years in the budget model. So that is something that we're going to live with to some degree for 4 years. So the other thing, and I mentioned, that makes part of that up is also state allocations. We were fortunate, and while we did see an enrollment dip, we held steady on state allocations. So that did not negatively impact us this year. We were able to hold, and the state didn't take us down this year. And then the other thing is tuition. And again, there were a lot of conversations that over the last semester plus revolved around tuition. But I think everybody recognizes that the tuition pressure in the marketplace is really starting to impact things. This is not just WVU, this is on the national landscape. So we were really sensitive in all corners of the university to what our market could take from a tuition increase perspective. And while we've been looking at bigger numbers in the past year, we landed on 1.4% on average this year for a tuition increase, for next year moving in. We recognize, and there were some corners that really kind of wanted to start looking at things like holding at no tuition increase for next year. We just couldn't simply take that on the budget, but we wanted to keep it as low as possible so that we could go into the marketplace being as competitively positioned as possible. So those are the things that have kind of put us where we are right now, staring in the face of just shy of a $15 million budget reduction. I'm gonna say this on the front end, and then I'll go through a little bit more detail here. That sounds like a big number, and I don't want to pretend it's not. It is. And it's on top of some budget cuts that we've taken over the last several years. One that was about 3 years ago was much bigger than this one. We survived it, and we will survive this one. I don't want to suggest it's easy. I don't want to suggest that it's not a little bit painful. It is. But we've been working to both centrally and with the colleges to make sure that we can really take this and do it in a way that maintains our ability to function and move forward. And I think we have that. I really do. So here's what we're looking at, and to give you, an idea of why we are where we are and what's made up the fiscal year 2020 budget. We're budgeting on 4,900 first-time students next fall. Okay? So that's an increase over what we saw, the dip last year that took us down to 4,688. So we're looking at budgeting at 4,900 new students. And I think, in this room, Paul's probably in the best position to address that, but what we're hearing from him is that we'll hit that. There's every likelihood that we will. So that's what we're looking at for Paul. It's going to be close, but we're hopeful for 4,900. This also assumes another important factor, and this is something to really keep in mind, and I know this is said by a lot of people. Retention and persistence matters. It matters for a whole lot of reasons. Not just in terms of the right thing to do to help our students and try and keep them here and let them progress, but it's got financial impact on our tuition revenue as well. So the budget is also built on an assumption that we're going to have a 0.5% increase in retention and a 0.25% increase in persistence. So those are two of the other assumptions that are built into the budget model for fiscal year 2020. I'm sorry. Retention is first-year students coming back the second year. Persistence is the same metric, but for second year and beyond students. Okay? So essentially, we're looking at the same dynamic, just to separate between freshmen returning for their sophomore year and sophomores and above returning for their subsequent years. With regards to that, after that, then we're also looking at, of that $14.8 million overall university reduction that I was talking about in terms of centrally allocated dollars, the academic portion of that reduction, so when we're looking at things, college units, things that report to the provost side of the house, we're looking at about $7.3 million. I'm sorry, $7.1 million. On top of that, you can add in about another $1.1 million when you look at the reductions that are being targeted for Potomac State as well as for WVU Tech. So cumulatively, we're looking at roughly about $8.2 million out of the 14.8. Let's see. As we were trying to look at how we could best take on those cuts on the academic side, we developed, and I don't want to give you the impression this is formulaic. It's not. So there's no formula which we're plugging these numbers into, and out the other side comes a reduction number for a particular unit. But we're trying to make cuts based on and targeted reductions not equal across the board, but based on a number of different metrics. This is imperfect, admittedly, and it's a first year's attempt at something that will get better and better each year as we kind of pay attention to additional metrics, figure out what matters, and add into that. Having said that, not exclusively, but as Paul and I worked through this with others, what we really tried to pay attention to were two broad set of metrics. One is instructional, and the other is research. So on the instructional side, we were looking at things like on undergraduate, graduate, and professional programs, what kind of first-time enrollment numbers we had, okay? And then also total enrollment. We also looked at things like, at the undergraduate side, minors. And we also looked at things like student credit hour production. Now, rather than on a one-year basis, what we were looking at were 5-year trends for these to understand, in general, which direction is an academic unit or a college headed across these kinds of metrics. And again, those are the primary metrics that we looked at on the instructional side. On the research side, we were informed not exclusively, but primarily on metrics that contribute to our R1 status. So as you might imagine, these were influenced appreciably by Fred King's office and his understanding of what really kind of drives our R1 status within the university. So along those lines, we looked at, and again on a 5-year trend basis, we looked at things like research expenditures, both externally supported as well as institutional expenditures on research activity. We looked at sponsored awards. We looked at F&A production. We also looked at things like PhD production, as well as the number of postdocs and PhDs that are in research support staff, so non-tenure track, tenure track positions, but who is a college hired in postdocs and PhDs to support the research endeavor. Those are some of the primary metrics that we looked at. And again, I don't want to suggest that it's all. I don't want to suggest that it's perfect and exhaustive. It's not. Nor did it go into a formula, nor do we recognize are all those metrics equally applicable to all units. But where they are, they start to help us get a picture of where a particular unit is headed. Here, unit, I'm saying college. And again, we take some other things into consideration, but this is part of the picture that we're trying to paint for understanding the direction that a college is headed, where it needs to go, and how we can help it get there strategically. So those are some of the metrics that we started to take a look at. Now, the question then is, once a budget, reduction target is given, how can colleges and units meet those? What are the different levers that they have at their disposal to try and address them? And there are a combination of things. And again, not all of them are going to be equally applicable or employable to each unit. But in general, we're looking at the following kinds of things. We're looking at funded vacancies. And here I do want to address one thing. I know there have been, the words of a hiring freeze have been bouncing around the university for a while, I understand. We have no wholesale hiring freeze, and I promise you that. What we are asking colleges, and this is, colleges and units are making decisions about how they can best meet their budget reduction targets. One of the levers that they have available are continuing some funded vacancies for perhaps another year. We are having discussions with them where there are the funded vacancies and asking, how strategically important is it to fill this one this year, or is it something that could possibly hold off for a year? But that really is driven by the college, its needs, its strategic vision, and it's a discussion. And point of fact, in the last couple of weeks, through Paul's office, there have been several hires that have been approved. So there is no hiring freeze. We're just asking for some thought that goes into the decision about whether to proceed into the next fiscal year or hold something off as a way to meet part of the budget reduction target. We're also looking at, and you have seen undoubtedly some stories as well as some campus conversations on VSIPs that have been launched. And again, I don't want to go into detail about that here, but if there are questions, I can certainly answer them. But the VSIPs are another means by which colleges might be able to meet part of their target reduction. Now, importantly, if the VSIPs are taken advantage of by a college, we're not going to see fiscal benefit or financial gain for that until fiscal year 21. Those won't materialize in fiscal year 20, but it can help a college meet its long-term over 2 years their budget reduction targets. So in addition to that, we're looking at possible operational efficiencies and again reductions. Can colleges take a look at their operating practices, and are there ways to do some reductions while still not harming their ability to function on their mission and what they need to deliver on? We're also looking at things like deploying foundational funds or foundation funds. And there are those out there where perhaps at least for a year we might be able to deploy some foundation funds, reduce some central allocations on either personnel or operations, and plug in some foundation or non-central funds to be able to offset that. Well, similar to the foundation funds, we're also looking at things like growth in non-central revenue. So college tuition, online programs. As you generate those, we can also deploy those to help offset some of the target reductions. Now again, the intent here is recognizing, especially as we move into later spring, sometimes meeting and pulling some of these levers that allow you to meet an overall budget reduction in a matter of a couple of months just isn't obtainable. So what we're also differentiating between are one-time and then base reductions. So for example, some of those foundation funds might be able to be deployed to help offset some central personnel or operational costs for next year, fiscal year 20, while the college has time to figure out how does it want to meet those reductions moving into fiscal year 21 on a more permanent basis. So we're recognizing that we do need to meet these challenges. How can we give the colleges as much flexibility as possible to be able to have time to figure out exactly how they're going to do it, and also to help us understand, what are our enrollment numbers going to look like moving into next year and then beyond to get a more solid picture of that. So that's really the landscape that we're looking at for fiscal year 2020 budget. I do want to at least mention. So I did mention at the front end that we looked at these metrics to try to understand how we might not have across-the-board cuts, but rather have some differential cuts. And without going into more detail than this, I do want to let you know that in meeting on the academic side of the house, when we look at academic units, the percent of cuts off of, and again, this is just central allocations for personnel and operations, but they range anywhere from about 2.3% up to 10.4%. So there was variation here. And again, we're trying to do that in a strategic manner, working with the colleges to help them understand, how we arrived at these numbers, what we're asking, and working closely with them to be able to address these challenges moving into fiscal year 20. And again, I want to end on this. Again, everybody sees this as, this is a challenge, no doubt, but the conversations have very much been about, yep, this is the landscape we operate in, and we will survive this, and we will be better for it. I think the colleges have really tackled it that way, the different units, and it's been a good response to what is our new reality. And I think in a lot of ways, this is a chance for us to transform too, for colleges, for the university as a whole, to resonate on the messages given by President Gee and Provost McConnell. We need to at times take a look at ourselves, how we're operating, and how we need to change to address the future landscape. This is part of that right now. And that's what we're doing. And again, working very closely with the units and the colleges to be able to accomplish this. This does put a challenge on our ability to commit to recurring resources, but we do retain the ability to make some one-time investments, and I do think that's important too. So, for example, even as we move into the end of fiscal year 19, we've been able to, with some leftover budget dollars, we've been able to deploy some of those resources on one-time spends to units that really need it to meet some strategic objectives. So one of them that we just approved last week was, close to, I think, mid-six-figure spend for the library to be able to secure some resources that it needs to be able to move forward that will benefit the entire campus. We want to maintain our ability to do that as well. IT. I mean, gosh, talk about a unit that, really touches everybody on campus. IT, we've been able to help and deploy some resources that way in ways that, oftentimes on a day-to-day basis you're not going to see, but it really helps our campus operate more efficiently and effectively in meeting our mission when we can put resources there. And some colleges as well that we've been able to invest in. And, while it becomes a challenge, we're going to retain our ability to do that moving into fiscal year 20 as well. So, along with the colleges and the units, essentially the provost office is taking a hit too. We're taking a reduction. But we're also maintaining some resources so that as we discuss with the colleges, what are your strategic goals for 2020? As you move to realize those, how can we use some one-time resources to help you move in that direction? So that's where we're headed and the why. Any questions?
I got one.
Okay, of course. That's what you do.
That's what I do. Just so I make sure I understand this, the reductions vary from unit to unit, and it's up to the units to determine the actual reductions that happen within them. In other words, Central has said varying between 2.3% and 10.8%. That's the reductions in the units, but the units themselves have to determine what they're cutting.
So the actual percentage of the reduction for central allocation was given to the colleges in discussion with them. How they meet those reductions are up to the colleges, yes. So they have these host of levers available, and they work out how they want to do that. Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay, thanks.
Okay. So we'll move on to next item on the agenda, a report from me. A couple of things. One, faculty working groups. As you know, we did several working group sessions over the back half of the academic year. We're not doing one today, so don't worry about that. I think those went relatively well. The output of the first group back in December helped inform the JEFCO's deliberations on potentially revised general education models, and a new model is coming out of JEFCO, and that should come out in the fall. The other working groups were related to issues of program department success failure. The output of those sessions are going to go to faculty welfare to get a report back. As you just heard, I think that it's important that Senate have a voice on those kinds of issues because, as we're seeing, those are used to make actual decisions about budgets and other things. So I wanted faculty to have a voice in those kinds of metrics and other things, and so we can all have a conversation about what those metrics should be and shouldn't be and things like that. So those working groups, I think, were important overall and will help us as we move forward. We also changed the Senate Constitution this year to make the June Senate meeting optional, as several people have mentioned. We are still scheduled to have a June Senate meeting, June 10th, here at the Alumni Center. Please keep it on your calendars. If Senate Exec, which meets in a week, determines that we can skip the meeting, then we'll certainly let you know that we're not having that meeting. But as of now, we are still scheduled to meet, and you should plan for that. If we somehow don't meet, there will need to be electronic votes on curriculum committee and general ed committee stuff, as we do at every meeting. You will need to participate in those, but again, we'll send information at that after exec sort of figures out what we're up to in June. Faculty Senate election update. We had a single candidate for Senate Chair-elect, and I'm delighted to report that Natalie Singh Corcoran won the election. Natalie's been a very active member of the Senate for years, and I have high confidence in her abilities to manage the Senate. Natalie will formally bring her term as Chair-elect on July 1st, when Emily Murphy steps up to be Chair herself. Ballots for the membership of the 2019-2020 Executive Committee will be going out tomorrow, Judy? Going out tomorrow, and everyone will vote electronically. The ballot will be sent to voting members of the Senate and will determine the 7 elected members of the Senate Executive Committee. Those are going to remain open through May 21st. Please, once you receive your ballot, read the instructions and vote so we can put the Executive Committee together for next year, and we certainly appreciate your time and patience in getting that together. We usually have Senate committees give oral reports of their activities, their report on their year's activities at the June Senate meeting. I'm going to move that around while the reports are still due, so the reports are due relatively soon so they can come to exec next week. I'm going to move the oral presentations of the reports to the September Senate meeting. This will allow the new senators to hear about what the committees are and what they're up to, and so they can sort of help be oriented into the new Senate. So the reports are still due. They're going to be reported out. You'll hear the oral reports from the committee chairs in September. I would ask the outgoing committee chairs to talk to the incoming committee chairs and kind of determine who wants to give the report in September, right? You can do it jointly. You can have one person stand up, the other person stand up, whatever it happens to be. But I would ask that the committee chairs, the incoming and outgoing for all the committees, get together and figure out how you want to make those oral presentations when September rolls around. Relatedly, Judy Hamilton, Emily, Lou Slimak, and I are sort of working on a set of programs training sessions that will happen in August or September before the Senate meeting. We're going to run all the committee members of the heavily curricular committees, the Faculty Senate Curriculum Committee, the Teaching and Assessment Committee, the GEF Committee, through a KIM training session to explain how KIM works, and so everybody's sort of on the same page on those committees and working with KIM, and they all understand collectively sort of what it does and how the different committees work through that. We're also going to put something together for all the new senators related to incoming Senate activities and all the Senate committees and other things that they're up to. And so we'll see, we'll give you some information on that, and if you folks want to come to those meetings, we're certainly welcome to. But if you're on those Senate committees, you will need to come to the training sessions regardless of whether you're old or new, but we'll get information out to you as the summer goes along as well. We voted some time ago to move to plus-minus grades at WVU that would actually count towards the student GPA. When this passed the Senate a few years ago, the intended semester this would start would be fall 2021. At the request of the Provost's office, that is likely to be delayed. How much of a delay is actually up in the air? The Provost's office is sort of working through how many places this touches in the university, everything financial aid to progress through the degrees and other things like that. They're going to try to come up with all the different places that this needs to be sort of fixed in the requirements and procedures. So once they figure that out over the summer, they're going to give us some idea of how long it's going to take to fix all those things so that we can actually institute the plus and minus grades. So we'll get back to you probably at the September meeting with an idea of exactly when plus minus grades will start to count for student GPAs. So details to follow, nothing permanent here at this point. So a reminder, as everyone else has done so far, everyone is going to join, hopefully, to celebrate Provost McConnell's service to the university. Again, that's today, 5 to 7, the College of Law event. It's basically right after the Senate meeting today, so I just wanted to remind folks of that one final time. I'll take this time to formally thank the Provost for the efforts she's done, for her time, energy, attention she's given to the Senate this year and in previous years. We certainly appreciate everything that she's done for the Senate and helped us through these things here. Finally, we are moving to the law school in the fall, right? So this may or may not be our last meeting here in the Alumni Center. We, again, plan for the June meeting. But as of September, we will move to the law school. The Senate office will send notices of this, so everyone should be warned of this. There doesn't seem to be a downside to this, only upsides. The law school has plenty of parking closer to both campuses, and so we think it's going to work out better and cost less. I intended to embezzle that, but as people pointed out to me, I'm not Senate chair next year, so Emily will be embezzling that as opposed to me. Okay, that's it for me. Anyone have questions? All right, next up, Ed, Curriculum Committee report.
Good afternoon. I have for your approval Annexes 1, 2, and 3. Next one is a new courses report, 2 courses changes, deletions, and adoptions, and the 3 changes to the major in international studies.
Okay, these are all 4 approval items, and I will combine them into a single votable measure. Are there any questions or points of discussion for Annexes 1, 2, and the changes to the international studies major? Okay, all those in favor of approving Annexes 1 and 2 and the International Studies major say aye. Those opposed say no. Potomac State, how do you vote?
Potomac State has 4 ayes, sir.
Thank you, sir. WVU Tech, how do you vote?
WVU Tech has 3 ayes.
Thank you, ma'am. Ayes have it. Annexes 1, 2, and the International Studies major are approved. Now a pair of 4 information items.
So there are 2 items for information, a new minor in communication disorders and a new minor in communication sciences.
Okay, are there any questions or points of discussion for the 2 new minors? All right, hearing no questions, the 2 minors are filed. Thank you, Ed. Next up, General Education Foundations Committee report from Robert Brock.
Hi. For your approval, there are 13 courses listed in Annex 3 for deletion.
Okay, these are a set of courses to be deleted out of the GEF. Are there any questions or points of discussion for Annex 3? Okay, all those in favor of approving Annex 3 say aye. All those opposed say no. Okay, Potomac State, how do you vote?
4 ayes, sir.
Thank you very much. WVU Tech, how do you vote?
WVU Tech has 3 ayes.
Thank you, ma'am. The ayes have it. Annex 3 is approved. There are no 4 information items from the GEF, so we will keep moving. Next up, the report from the Teaching Assessment Committee.
Hi. As I've mentioned throughout the past year, the TACO Committee ran a pilot course and section review in child development and engineering. We are putting it out if a department is interested in joining us next year and engaging in this work. We would like you to reach out to either Lou Slimak, David Hauser, or myself, so you can take it back to your department. They would be engaged in this process with TACO. Our goal is to get every department in the university within how many years? What's our goal? Lou says 30 years. So, did you say 3 or 30? Okay, 30 years.
And all departments will eventually go through this. So if you're interested in helping the TACO out with this as it moves along, you can be sort of part of the process early, A, and get it done, B, sort of can participate in this process. So I would encourage you, if you're interested, this is a good way to get your courses reviewed and sort of help, which will eventually happen for everybody, and sort of help the Senate out in the process. Okay, thank you, Ashley. Next up, report from Faculty Representative to State Government, Roy Nutter.
Roy Nutter, Statler College, and your ACF rep. I attended the HEPC meeting on April 26th. A few things I thought maybe you'd be interested in. As you probably have heard, there was a selection for the new chancellor of HEPC. They had 7 candidates. The new chancellor is Sarah Tucker, who's also chancellor for CCTC. I think that's my opinion. I think that's probably a good thing in that bringing 4-year schools and 2-year schools under a little bit more common management is probably going to improve things. The Chancellor's report said that there is a new data portal. I don't know if you've used the HEPC website, but I find myself going to that data portal fairly often. And supposedly it's eliminating, quote, some reporting with electronic methods and more accurate reporting. Another piece of information, the West Virginia graduation rate for high schools to college said that it is 30%. Their goal is 50%. So 30% of high school graduates going on to not four-year schools, four-year and two-year schools. So they're doing things to increase that number. President's Council, chairman of the President's Council noted that the legislature will form a study group this summer on higher education. Not sure I know what that means. Maybe we'll find out eventually. Promise requirements, the Promise scholarships, I'm sure you're all aware of, but the requirements are the same as they have been for next year, the same as they are this year. They maintain the award level for 1920 academic year at the lesser of tuition and mandatory fees, or $4,700.50. That's not right. $4,750 annually. So that, I think, is the same as it has been. I believe there was, I don't think I wrote this down anywhere, but I think the total amount of dollars for that was like $49 million. The other piece of scholarships and grants, there's a $40 million grant called Higher Education Grant Program, which provides about $2,400 per student. This is the state's longstanding need-based financial aid program for post-secondary education. They award 30,000 plus students a year, but only 17,000 use it. I found that rather shocking. There is upcoming HEPC meeting by phone this week. I poked around to see if I could find out why. It appears that they're doing something related to the Bluefield State president who has resigned. That concludes my report.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Roy? Okay, thank you. Next up, a Board of Governors report from Stan Heilman.
So the board met on April 11th in committee meetings and on April 12th for the public meeting, and I apologize if this is going to be a little longer, but they were two pretty long days where we discussed a lot of various things. One, we approved the finance rule that was out dealing with procurement. I don't think they had received any comments for that one. There are 6 different rules up now for comment, and if you want to comment on them, you need to get to them because tomorrow is the last day to receive comment on those. Probably the most important one for several people here, this is the rule dealing with intellectual property and how that will be handled at the university. So if you have an interest in that or a stake in that, you need to go and look on the website and comment on that rule if you need to. We received a financial update. As Mark talked a little bit earlier, we discussed that at length. Passed the minimal tuition increase that he mentioned, the 1.4% on average. Talked about Sodexo revamping space in the Evansdale residential complex in Hatfield, so that will be changing. Discussed athletic facilities upgrades and the money-raising campaign that they have going. And then renovations in the health sciences for relocation of several offices for the School of Pharmacy. We also approved committees for evaluation of the president and subsequent compensation. The board executive offers form the compensation and contractual committee, whereas the rest of the members, which included Matt and I, formed the evaluation committee, and we met with several groups on April 29th, and we'll continue talking to various people in the very near future. We heard staff presentations by Lisa Martin and a number of staff members, And we also heard a very nice presentation from the Student Government Administration, including Isaac Obiama, who will be exiting the board as a student rep, and we'll be walking the new president on of the Student Government Administration beginning in July. The next meeting will be on Thursday, June 20th for the committees. That'll be at Bechtel Summit. And then we'll have the next day, the public meeting on June 21st at the Beckley campus. And Matt and I and some other faculty, including Emily, I think, and others will be doing the faculty presentation to the board at that meeting. So I will finish my report by personally saying some of my own thanks. One to CB. I know when we have meetings and we talk about things such as the faculty constitution, a lot of times questions come up and the ultimate answer is, I don't know, let's ask CB and see what he says. So there's a lot of institutional knowledge that will be leaving when he retires, but I hope he enjoys his retirement. Next is you. Dave's been an excellent liaison between the faculty and central administration, has done a very good job. And so it's much appreciated. Although I reserve the right to take those back if we have a June faculty senate meeting. Just telling you. Third is Matt. Matt is coming to the end of his Board of Governors stint. He had 2 years. He has been an excellent representative of the faculty. Matt's a very detail-oriented person, so it's very good to have someone who can dig down into some of these things and ask very good questions and get some very valuable answers from the various representatives. So Matt, it's been an honor, and it's been my pleasure to serve with you for the last 2 years on the board. He's done an excellent job. And last but not least, of course, is the Provost McConnell. She has been an excellent representative of this university, and it's been an honor and pleasure to work with her the last few years. I've heard a lot of terms used since she announced her presidency for Colorado State. Most of them good, except some of the ones President Gee has used. Otherwise, they've been good. But the one that struck with me, I think the one that hit home for me most is the term nurturing. And I think it's pretty obvious that Joyce has a lot of care and for the people of this university and the university itself. So Joyce, it's been my pleasure and honor to work with you for the last 2 years. And I'm sure Colorado State is getting an absolutely fabulous person. So thank you. That's my report, Dave.
Any questions for Stan? Okay. Next up, this is a resolution to create a Faculty Senate Sustainability Committee. So if you remember back about a month, Senator Hessel, who actually is ill today, can't be here, asked about WVU's sustainability statement. I reached out to Tracy Nabenshu, who's the Sustainability Director in Faculties, Facilities and Services, and she asked for some faculty help with several things that her office does there. With that in mind, I proposed, and Senate Exec approved, a proposed resolution that would establish a special committee. Constitutionally, a special committee is one that expires after just a year, that could work with Tracy Nabenshu and work with Faculty Senate and faculty in general on some of these issues. So I've drafted a broad set of charges, which you'll find as Annex 4 in the agenda, related to these issues that other faculty have mentioned to me, and as I said, came up through Tracy Nabenshu. And Tracy has clearly indicated she would like some help with this as well. So again, this is a special committee that will expire in about a year. As I envision this would be created over the summer, would get started next fall, meet throughout the year, reporting on whatever they find out, helping Tracy in other things, and then in a year or so, they can report back to Senate, and we can decide whether we want to extend the committee or cut it off at that point or whatever it happens to be. So I'm asking us to approve the charge for this committee so it can get established. Are there any questions or points of discussion for Annex 4, the resolution that would create the Special Committee on Sustainability? Okay, all those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. Potomac State, how do you vote?
Potomac State has 4 ayes.
Thank you, sir. WVU Tech, how do you vote?
WVU Tech has 3 ayes.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, the ayes have it. The committee is formed, and I'll work with the Committee on Committees to populate the new committee and try to get it up and running for the new academic year. Okay, next up is a couple of Faculty Senate position appointments, and since this actually involves me potentially, I'm going to turn this over to Matt to let him run this portion of the meeting.
Okay, thank you, Dave. So it's time for us to confirm a new faculty secretary. The terms run in 3-year increments, and I just completed the term that was begun by Alan Stolzenberg and continued by Chad Proudfoot. But before we do that, I wanted to echo Stan's sentiments of gratitude towards Dave Hauser. And the executive committee, I think, shares the sentiments, because when we met to confirm a new faculty secretary, we picked Dave Hauser to be the new secretary in gratitude of his fine service. And he hesitated a little bit, but he generously accepted the appointment. And actually, I'm the past Senate chair. It's actually a good role for a past Senate chair. A lot of the duties are things that he would be doing anyway, attending certain meetings and so forth. So also, it turned out that nobody else was interested in serving. So now, one thing Dave didn't realize when he accepted that it is actually a 3-year appointment. He keeps writing 1 year in his script, but it's 3 years. He may be approaching someone next year if he wants to term out to see if someone wants to replace him. But for now, it's a 3-year appointment. So with that in mind, we do need to confirm him. He has been appointed by exec, but the Faculty Senate needs to confirm him. Are there any questions or points of discussion for this appointment? WVU Tech, do you have any questions or points of discussion?
No, thank you.
And Potomac State, any questions or points of discussion?
No, sir, no questions.
Okay. With that in mind, then all those in favor of confirming Dave Hauser as faculty secretary, please say yay. Okay, or aye, or whatever. You wrote yay. I like aye. I like aye better. Yay. Okay. Tech, how do you vote?
WVU Tech has 3 ayes.
Okay. And Potomac State, how do you vote?
Potomac State has 4 ayes.
Okay, good. Okay, so the next order of business is appointment of faculty representative to state government. This is a 1-year term, and just as a reminder, this position advises the Senate about actions of educational advisory groups within the state, represents the faculty and university interests before the legislature, and also serves as the WVU representative to the ACL, which is the Advisory Council of Faculty. Now, in this case, there were several individuals that were interested, including the incumbent, Roy Nutter. After some discussion at the April exec meeting, exec decided to reappoint Roy as the faculty representative to state government. And of course, that will also include having him continue to serve as rep to the ACF, which he's done very well for many years. And then we are also supposed to appoint someone to be the alternate representative to the ACF, and this is actually a position I held for the last couple of years. It also is a good position for the immediate past chair, and with a little bit of arm twisting, we were able to get Dave Hauser to agree to do that as well. So his job will primarily be to go to ACF meetings when Roy is not available. I think we can handle both of these appointments together. So to summarize, we'll be confirming the appointment of Roy Nutter to faculty representative to state government, and confirming the appointment of Dave Hauser to alternate representative to the ACF. And in this case, they're both for 1 year, the 2019 to 2020 academic year. Okay, so are there any questions or points of discussions for these appointments? Tech, any questions or points of discussion?
No, thank you.
Okay, and Potomac State, any questions or points of discussion?
Nope, good to go.
Okay, so all those in favor, please say aye. Okay. Opposed? Okay, Tech, how do you vote?
WVU Tech has 3 ayes.
Okay, Potomac State, how do you vote?
4 ayes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I should note, by the way, that we should give Matt Valente a round of applause. He's done yeoman's work being past Senate chair and then faculty secretary. We are actually losing him. He's going to be department chair over in Statler. So the reason for the things that you just had happen is that Matt's actually moving away from the Senate so that he can be encumbered with lots and lots of work as a chair. So we do owe him a round of applause. He's done a lot of things for the Senate. Okay, is there any new business?
Yes, my name is General Hambrick, and it might have been brought up before, but the crosswalk at Beechhurst and I guess it's pronounced Huff, between Hodges and the building Iceland? Yes. Anyway, there's a crosswalk there, and I've called downtown, a couple of us, but nothing has been done about that crosswalk. And I wasn't going to say anything until I saw a student get knocked about 3 feet into the air. And I don't know who to go to have something done about that. Because I've called downtown and they kind of gave me the runaround. So.
You want to come up? Hey, you come up or get to the microphone. It's okay. But branch campuses can't hear us unless you're talking to a microphone.
Yep. Oh, those are nice shoes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm not the authority on this. I just happen to have sat in a number of meetings where we are addressing these issues, and I believe me, that it has caught a lot of attention. So here is where that is going to become most relevant. That is actually under control of Department of Highways. So as we move into this summer, and assuming that demolition work begins on Stansbury, there has been concern because the bridge that crosses Stansbury over to the PRT station will go away with the demolition of Stansbury. That has necessarily forced attention on how we handle pedestrian traffic across, and the current state of affairs, absent that bridge, has become a point of concern. So we actually have, and this is out of Rob Alsup's unit, but we have people who are interacting with Department of Highways right now to talk about both and I say short term, but really with the construction that's going on down there, that'll amount to about 3 to 4 years of needing something alternative and that is safer. So any number of discussions with the Department of Highways about a temporary crosswalk in that location or very close to it, flashing, basically stoplight that's flashing for pedestrian traffic to something that highlights attention there is an active discussion right now. So I can't tell you that it will be solved, but the discussion is pushing forward about it.
Thank you.
And you are talking about the crosswalk that goes across Beechhurst, actually, correct?
Yes.
Yep, that
Yes.
one.
Thank you.
Do you have a timeline on that?
I wish I did, but no. It's an active discussion.
I guess Roy's got a point on this one, too.
If you don't throw tomatoes, as the ex-chair of the Morgantown Traffic Commission, I keep up with Pedestrian Board. Pedestrian Board is actually meeting today, where'd he go? Meeting today as we speak, and that's one of the agenda items.
Oh, good. Well done. It's getting, they're meeting about it right now. Okay.
It's Scott Critchlow, Eberle. I'm bringing up an issue tied to the appointment of the provost appointee. I received a lot of negative feedback on that not being an open hire from colleagues in Eberle. I sent a letter about that to my constituents' complaints to the other Eberle senators, got more feedback. And so prior to this meeting, I wrote a memorandum about 3 or 4 pages that I sent to you right before the meeting. I brought some handouts. I'm happy to pass those out if those interested, or to just send an electronic copy. There's a wide variety of concerns, but probably the 2 major things when it comes down to it are how outside the norm we are in terms of statewide institutions through this kind of appointment process, and also kind of a confusion about the role faculty should simply play in this at all ever. In terms of the selection of the premier academic official who sets the curriculum, makes all P&T decisions, those kinds of things. So what I am proposing, considering the feedback that I've heard, if the Senate would accept it, would be that the Senate would create a committee to review that hiring process, both the direct things that were brought up, like was there a job ad, was there any systematic way to try and control for equal employment opportunity concerns, who was involved in evaluating possible candidates, what were the set criteria, if there were set criteria or not. So some things are about those direct questions about the hire. Some are more about indirect questions that are both positive and negative in terms of the image this would present to potential recruitment issues tied to new incoming deans, things like that. But also things about just simply our positions of faculty, but not having to hire. We don't know the new person's positions tied to major budget cut issues, tied to the equivalence of TAPS and tenure track faculty, et cetera, et cetera. So given the combination of both concerns and simply confusion, what I would hope that the Senate would do would be to create a committee that would simply kind of make a record, an evidentiary record for what actually occurred. And then steps could be taken, one, potentially tied to this hire if necessary, but especially since we're about to go on a dean hiring spree, that maybe from that record, the Senate could review what actually goes into the decision-making processes and what proper role the faculty should play in selecting deans, provosts, et cetera. And then I guess a subsidiary question to that would be, should that also apply to interims, since it seems like we always have half interims as well as full-times. But that's maybe a slightly different issue.
Okay. Sure. You need to get to a microphone so the... President Gee, you need to get to a microphone, so...
As a matter of fact, that's all right. Okay.
The thing I was writing part of the meeting today was so long. And simply in the first place, like, was there a job ad? What were the criteria? Who were the finalists?
There was not a job ad because of the fact that we did an internal review. I talked to the faculty leadership. I talked to a number of folks. And it was agreed that two things. One is the fact that we did not have time to have a search. I'm 75. I don't have time to do a lot of searches right now, number one. Number two is the fact that she is very well qualified, having been an excellent dean of this institution for 16 years and has undergone immense changes and has led those changes in a very effective way. So what is the issue?
That the faculty believe that they should be involved in the appointment of the provost.
I think the faculty should be involved.
But
in this instance, I didn't consult you, I know, but I did consult a number of
It's definitely just
people.
not me.
But no, Scott, I think that this is unfair to Mary Ann, and I think it is also unfair to point out that there was not a consultation. When I appointed Joyce, I did the very same thing.
Yes,
and your issue also about what this presents. I have appointed a number of provosts over the years. Never had a search at most of those because they were confident people and they wanted to have at Brown and at Vanderbilt. They never have searches for provosts because the fact that is a role for the president to go out and try to find the best person. In fact, when I was at Brown, I approached Larry Bacco to be the provost. He nearly accepted it. He went on to Tufts, now is the president of Harvard. He would not have gone through a search. The point is the fact that, yes, faculty do have a role to play. And in this instance, this is a role in which the president of the university and the provost are very tightly aligned. And, now if we were going to go have an external search, I think that we would have a search that would be very broadly based, and I would do that. I would still have it be a screening search because I believe that the candidate that we want to have for provost and most of the candidates we want to have for dean do not want to be here. They want to be very happy where they are. We go out and attract people who don't want to be here in order to come and be good leaders because the fact that they believe that this is the right place for them once convinced. And the role of faculty, you've just heard, we're going to have a number of searches across the board, and they're going to be, most of them, national searches. But in the sense of the role of a provost, that is a very particular relationship. And if we don't know what her relationship is to the university after 16 years, then I think that is a problem because she's been one of our most active and able deans and has done an excellent job. And so in this instance, I understand what your concern is, but I think in this instance, for those who have a concern about it, raise, you know, you can send me notes, you can write to it, but to have this be a faculty resolution about a new provost who I think is coming in with tremendous respect. Now, she does not have a PhD. I'm the first to admit she has a terminal degree in her business, in her area, number one. Number two is the fact that I am a great admirer. For those who go on and have PhDs, they work very hard. That is an incredible achievement. But it does not necessarily mean that not having a PhD does not allow you to have great academic credibility and integrity and great wisdom and great leadership. And in this instance, she has proven that a hundredfold. And so I think the resolution in this instance, which is really directed at her and in some ways at me, is very inappropriate at this point.
The resolution is meant to simply collect information about the hiring process.
And I have just given you the hiring process.
So basically, there was no process aside from...
Basically, there was a process, which was that I consulted
There was no
widely.
systematic process.
Pardon?
There was no systematic process.
I think my review was very systematic.
Well,
And that was the same way that I appointed Joyce.
But that is part of why so many faculty who have concerns about this are not comfortable speaking publicly, because we have, at all campuses of this university, a tradition of internal hires for senior positions that make it very difficult to raise process questions.
And you know, I think they worked out pretty well. And I think that they worked out pretty well. I think in the instance of the provost, I think that Joyce did an excellent job. And I believe that that works out very well in terms of what we're doing. Now, I understand the issue. If we were going to have an external search, then yes, we would have one. And if we were going to have an internal search in which there was a lot of issues that we need to raise, yes. But I think in this instance that what we have is an opportunity to affirm someone who's done an excellent job and not have her start off in a deficit position. And I think that would not be in the best interest of our university.
Well, we work in a national, international learning environment.
We do.
We have apparently a process which looks nothing like any other Big 12 university. Doesn't look like Marshall, doesn't look like other small schools around here. I mean, why should we follow the Brown model? Are we all going to get paid like Brown now?
Well, you know, I think it's a good institution with a lot of confidence. I think that Vanderbilt is a good institution. I think Harvard is a good institution. They don't have searches for their provost. Larry just appointed one. And the point I'm making is the fact that, yes, if we have an external search, yes. If we have an internal search in which we want to try to find the very best person, I think that after 5 years, I'm pretty qualified to identify what that person is. And I think that I have a good track record on that regard. And in this instance, we did consult. I did talk to a number of people. I did have long conversations with a good group of folks across the spectrum of the institution. And that kind of consultation, I think, is what is meant by faculty governance. Not everything has to be a cross T and a dotted I kind of a search. In this instance, it was, I think, well served in the interest of the university.
Well, I would continue to be an instigator for 2 more points. So legal is fine with things in terms of equal employment opportunity side of things in terms of this approach.
Pardon?
Legal is fine with this from an equal opportunity.
They were. I talked to them about it.
Well, the only other thing I'll say is that someone I do respect a very great deal, of course, respect you as well, is retiring.
Excuse me, Scott, say that
I
again.
expect this will be like the last time I see CB, and one thing I've heard from CB again and again, including the 6 years I was chair, when it comes to promotion and tenure, and of course also hiring decisions, only one person matters. The provost decision is what matters. She decides everything in terms of promotion.
And you think she's not qualified?
No, I'm saying that I think the faculty at this university would therefore like to have more of an opportunity to shape who is chosen as provost of this university, considering the vast power she has over all of our careers.
And I'm not disagreeing with that. What I'm saying is that in this instance, we have a provost who's been here for a long period of time with a distinguished record, and so she is very well known to our faculty and to our university. And I think that is different from having an external search. And I think in this instance, speaking widely, and Dave knows, I did speak to the faculty leaders. We talked about 3 or 4 different people. In fact, Dave did not necessarily agree with mine, but we had a conversation about it. And he agreed that we had some excellent candidates in that regard, as did the Faculty Senate. So, Scott, I think that this is one of those things where we can agree or disagree, but I think in this instance, that rather than us argue about the rights of the faculty, which I think I not only understand, but I'm here all the time, and I believe in those rights, but I think when it comes down to being one of those things where it is because of the fact that some people disagree with the choice, then that is a different issue, particularly when we've had a distinguished member of our university community who has been a dean for 16 years, who has been the strongest possible advocate for the issues of integrity, for inclusion, for diversity, and for women's rights. We should not necessarily try to embarrass that individual.
My final point would be that most of the people who have talked with me about this are not talking about her specifically. They're talking about the process and the role of faculty.
Well, let me just say something, that I think that I understand that. I'd be happy to come and talk with the folks that you have, and we can have that discussion. But to have it in this kind of an environment, I think is not in the best interest of our new appointment. So, David, that's my view, and I'm speaking now as a member of this community too. I am a faculty member, and I believe that is a view that should be represented. And I stand on my record in terms of appointments, by the way. Over a long period of time, I've done this for 40 years, and I think we've got a good one here.
Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this issue?
Holly Montgomery Downs, Eberly College. I am not quite sure how that got so personal so fast, but I do not think that was the intention. The message that was brought from Eberly College representatives was about the policy and the practice, not about the individuals. The current appointment creates an opportunity to have a discussion that we probably should have had quite a long time ago. So the intention of this, correct me if I'm wrong, is not to call into question this particular individual, but rather to form a way of moving forward with greater transparency and greater faculty governance.
Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this? All right, then I'm going to try to interpret this. A senator has put forward a motion that we form a committee to investigate some aspects of the hiring process at the upper levels.
May I slightly reword that? Because again, that was the larger point I was trying to make in the first place, and the whole last section of the memo is about the virtues and benefits that come from that open process. So the intention would have been more the word collect information than the word investigate.
Sure. So a committee that would collect information and examine issues and maybe best practices at other places and sort of see how other faculty have approached the issue of hiring at the upper levels of the administration. That's a vague charge, and that's obviously not enough for us to move forward. So I guess what I would propose is that we take a vote and get a sense of the Senate of whether or not the executive committee should put together a more focused charge that would try to establish a committee that would move forward. That charge would then come to the Senate to be voted on again. And at that point, we, like I said, so get a sense of the Senate today as to whether or not the executive committee should attempt to form a committee that would look at this in the future. Again, we're a Democratic body. It seems to me that we ought to vote on this. Agreed. Would anyone like to speak to this? In order to have a vote, there's a motion on the floor. We will need a second. There is a second. Okay, then I think I will distribute ballots, and we will have a vote. A yes is in favor of of sending the issue to the executive committee to try to have them come up with a specific charge. A no would be, nope, we're fine with this, and we're reasonably okay with the process as it's happened. And so we will move forward with that. Comments? Okay, we will try to get some ballots out. All right, folks, we're gonna do the count now. You're welcome to stay if you want to hear the results or take off. We'll certainly send the results out after we get them, and I'll let you know what this turns out to be. Again, we'll move through this as quickly as you can, but if you got someplace to go, we understand. We're working with them so that they're voting. I think they're sending All right. Thank you for your consideration. The motion has passed, so the issue will move to the executive committee, which I will ask to come up with a specific charge related to the comments by the senator from Eberly, which we will then bring back to Senate for a further vote to charge the committee and form the committee, and if the Senate chooses to or not. But in any event, it will move to exec and then back to the Senate after that. Anyone have a comment or suggestion at this point?
Yeah, Dave, in light of this action, I'm wondering if we should uncancel the June meeting or, yeah.
I have a strong feeling there will be a June meeting, yes.
So keep it in your calendar. Sorry.
Okay. All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Second. Don't forget to go to the provost thing.